But I mean, this is a lot, it's like a very mature, like, I mean, I would say like residents.
Oh, yeah, way more younger people.
But
No,
it's commercial,
it's an aging.
It's different, and you know, you're handling millions and millions of dollars, pretty much every transaction, right?
Yeah.
You come and rent this building, you know, I'm paying a lot of money, but the building itself. And I would tell you this, I would do residential all day and then give here, because residential, it's so, right now, you're making the same kind of commission out there 15 years ago, 20 years ago. You made the same commission on the same house, yet the house is double what it was.
Plus, it's that control that commercial and residential both make the same, you just stick your voice.
I love commercial.
It's awesome. I'm in a big commercial. He works with Javier and all those.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been doing it all day long. He's your coach. Hey, Mom, what about you guys?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's called like Mastermind, but it's like my fourth one, you know, so it's more like, you know, we'll kind of review and go over some stuff, and then we'll talk about, like, if anybody has any deals that, you know, they want to go through, like case studies or. And I.
Good morning. Hey, morning. Somebody.
Good. What's happening, Captain? How you doing, man?
Okay, what's up?
All right.
So,
All right,
have a good one.
good luck with that one.
Espérate con el de Costa.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's not like it's all the principal. Is that the only thing?
Alguien puede hacer empresas de subsidiar la escala en comercial. Y que entonces tener
That's
ese
it.
privilegio de estar dentro de la
Oh. You like it black? There you go. Yeah. You know, it's funny, like, no one's here for commercial guy right now, but no one gets it. This is. Don't say. Y'all, last one should be in here. Every residential agent should be in here right now.
Yeah.
Not because I want to learn about commercial. I want to know what y'all do, and I want to see who leads and get the heck out of the way, staying out of there. That's what makes money. Crazy. Crazy, but response, buddy. Good morning, ladies.
Okay.
Well, good morning, Elvis.
Yeah.
comercial. Porque alguien que
So now we're sharing.
No, you're not. I took it off. I don't know which one you wanted to share.
I'm gonna do it. Thank you. I'll be right back.
Pero que en la vecina no. Aquí no. No, ya dice mi. Bueno.
tiene el mensaje. Sí.
¿Qué pasó? ¿Y dónde está ella? Ella no es de aquí, de tu oficina. Ella no es de tu oficina.
Es una pareja de doctores entonces, esos van a heredar
Sí, pero ya hoy he recibido carta de intención. Sí, sí. Preguntarle a.
Well, it looks like it's about 10 o'clock. Again, everybody seeing in Zoom? Zoom land? Anybody? I think that's where I'm supposed to focus. Anybody? Hey, Nicole, can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you see the screen?
Hey.
Are you
I'm good.
good?
So,
Yeah. She's on mute. I know that.
let me check, what is the?
Yes.
the Zoom-
I can see it.
You can, okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure, that you can see it or whatever. Anyway, all right, so, yeah, this is the commercial mastermind. I don't know exactly what that means, but anyway. Sounds pretty important, but what I'll talk about today is kind of what we, hang on one second. Close these doors. Okay, sorry. So anyway, what we're gonna do is we'll just kind of go over what we talked about, like in the previous classes, and more or less, you know, if there are any like questions, I'll be glad to answer them if I can, and if not, then I'll just get back to you. And if y'all have like specific case studies, that you're maybe, you know, interested in right now, or maybe doing for yourself, or you're just interested, I'll be glad to answer any of those. So y'all just let me know. So what we're gonna do is start off with the commercial basics, kind of an overview. Let's see. So the type of asset classes that we have are the industrial, office, retail, hospitality, storage, mixed use. And there are probably, you know, a bunch of other ones that you can think of right now, but these are kind of the basic food groups as we kind of refer to them as. So we focus at Trinity Commercial Real Estate more on the industrial side and more of the tenant representation, which we represent tenants that want to lease space in an industrial building. And then you could do the tenant representation in the office retail. Hospitality is more like buy and sell, self-storage, more buy and sell, and mixed use is more just of a kind of a development deal. All right, so industrial, these are just kind of pictures of what most people consider industrial. You have some class A in there, you have, looks like a plane hangar, that could be considered industrial. And then more flex space that you'll see on those other two. Kind of moving fast, but y'all let me know if there are any questions on any of this stuff.
How do you define flex space?
Flex space, good question. So flex space is space that has more or less two different uses, right? So you could have industrial flex space where it's more like an office setting and maybe a little bit of warehouse in the back. They're all, like most industrial buildings have, you know, some sort of office component, but there are a lot now that where industrial has been converted completely to office. Like you walk in and it looks like you're just walking into an office building. And so you could do retail with some office. I mean, so I don't know if you've seen like these strip centers and things like that that have maybe a church in it, you know, more retail, but then office more like a church. So good question. Office, we have like the office that we're sitting in right now, and then multi-level kind of different things in the industrial that I was telling you that, and then converted to the office, which is down here in the lower right-hand corner. That's one. All right, retail. Everybody kind of knows retail, if anything, right? There's a Lululemon right down from here. So Whole Foods, that's a shopping center, you know, that's anchored by a grocery store, and then you have just, more traditional. This one at the bottom left is, it's got two different levels, but they're direct entry. So on this particular, retail center, you can direct entry on the bottom level, and then you drive up. And it's direct entry on the top level. It looks like, you know, two different stories. You might have to get an elevator or something like that, but that's not the case here. Hospitality. Like in the bottom right hand corner, I think that's Bellagio. And that's a casino, hotel, and then resorts, things like that. And then you have in the bottom left-hand corner, that particular building has a mixed use inside of that building, which it has retail, condos, and office. So, and then
The resort, right?
this particular one is not considered a resort, but it will have sometimes a hotel component to it. You know, especially for those big offices, they do convention centers and things like that.
Good.
But hotels, resorts, sandals is kind of a hospitality thing, but more on a larger scale. So we'll go to the next, self-storage. I'm sure you've seen a lot of this going around. There's one right around the corner, at Rogers Bridge and Buford Highway. They just,
It's just open.
yeah, just opened, right? And there's car wash next door to that, which is a client line.
Yeah.
And then mixed use, we actually are in more of a mixed use here at the Forum. And you see the construction going on now. It's gonna add more amenities and work, live, play kind of thing. We don't have the, and we really don't have a live component here, except across the street, you know, you've got some residential up there, townhomes, things like that. And then. And by the way, anytime y'all have any questions, just don't, feel free to just interrupt me, because I'll just keep going until I, you know, hear somebody have a question. All right, so activities that you can participate in, leasing, tenant, you can be on the tenant side, like I said, that we are on primarily, and then you can be on the landlord side, represent the landlord. Buy and sell, purchase and sale, same thing, you either represent the buyer. Same thing in residential. Investment sales, kind of the same kind of deal. There's more investment sales, just like anything in commercial real estate is somebody's investment. If you think about it, somebody is either operating their business out of there or they're leasing it to somebody. There's always some sort of investment component to it, because like, even if you operate if you're an owner user and you're operating your business out of there, you're gonna wanna create an entity that owns it and then leases it to another entity. So you get the benefit of the ownership and the benefits of being able to write off 100% of your lease payment as an operating expense. And then, so, and another thing is, triple net investments. I think you've seen these that hit the market, right? There's no, like, in a lot of cases, there are no landlord responsibilities, like a CDS, you know, I own the building, they pay me rent, right? And by the way, if the roof blows off, CDS has to replace it. And, you know, there's different ways, when they talk about triple net, you have to be careful on that, because if you just throw out the word triple net, a lot of people think that, well, everything is on, you know, the tenant, right? Those are just the expenses, like property taxes, property insurance, common area maintenance, the tenant, hey, what's that? Yeah, and so, but having said that, that's just one component of it. So the landlord still might, in a triple net situation, might have the responsibility of roof, structure, parking lot, things like that. So some people say, well, it's a triple net, so there's no landlord responsibility. Gotta be careful with that. Just make sure, if you're looking to do this, make sure that you read the lease and understand exactly where the responsibilities lie. All right, so development is just anything, take some land, carve it up, put things that people want in the area, right? Let's see. Commercial terms, you'll see it a lot, cap rates, internal rate of return, cash on cash, equity multiple. Look, a lot of these terms are the same terms that you're gonna see if you're doing investments on residential. There's really no difference. You're gonna have a cash on cash, you're gonna have a cap rate, you're gonna have all these things, where you're gonna have an equity multiple. Where you will see some changes in this triple net, absolute, double net, single net, common area maintenance, operating expenses, and you still might have some sort of debt service coverage ratio that you have to adhere to if you have a loan. Again, I'm just blowing past these things. So if you have any questions, let me know. Discount rates, that's again, these are, investment measures that people adhere to, like, whether they have to have a certain cash on cash, they have to have their 100% of their equity back in a certain time. Discount rate is basically, more or less a forward cash flows discounted back to today based on your cash on cash return hurdle that you have to receive. And if you decide if this investment will achieve that. Debt constant is, it's a fancy way of saying, the percentage of your loan amount that you pay every year, pretty much it. Co-tenancy clause, don't see a lot of these anymore, right? So one of those co-tenancy clauses is this. Say you have Belks, like right here, right? And they went out of business. On a co-tenancy clause, that means another tenant might be able to leave because Belks left, right? Nobody likes those, especially lenders. So, because you could have a serious domino effect. One goes out, takes them all down. Kick out clauses are like ways to get out of a lease where, either you pay money or you pay to a certain term and then you can leave if you want. Rent ratios, real simple. It's for tenant metrics it's basically your occupancy cost, not necessarily utilities and things like that, but occupancy cost where it relates to your rent and any operating expenses such as common area maintenance, property taxes, insurance, and divide that by your gross revenue, and that'll give your rent ratio. Tenant improvement allowance, real simple. That's the amount of money that a landlord in a lease situation will give to the improvements of the space. Net operating income, pretty simple. Now, the calculation to get there and including what to include and not to include is a little bit more difficult, but net operating income is essentially the total revenue that you get minus all the operating expenses, excluding debt. Debt is not included in a net operating income number. And that bottom line is your NOI.
Isn't that what they usually ask? Like, they can ask for that anytime during the term of the lease, or
Like, who could ask for that?
the actual, well, the lessor? Can they just simply start prodding anyway, anytime they want to? How the finances are?
Oh, you're talking about a tenant? Like,
Yeah, on a tenant, sorry.
All right, so if a landlord wants to kind of see the health of
Yeah.
the tenant. Yeah, so good question. So a lot of times in the lease, the tenant has to report their financials. Now, there used to be a thing, and it's not as popular as it used to be a long time ago, but percentage rent. It's like, okay, if you need this certain hurdle of revenue, then, you know, the landlord is gonna participate in that benefit, right? So really don't see a whole lot of that now,
Okay.
but they still have the right to the books, right? Even though, you know, the landlord's not gonna participate in any kind of, benefit over the hurdle
Right.
that you might have said. They do wanna know the health of the tenant, right? It's just smart.
So just, it works in a tenant scenario, just like it works in the scenario where you're actually purchasing the thing and you have a mortgage over it, right? The
Yeah. I
mortgage can
mean-
also do the same thing, the mortgagor in this case.
Yeah, so the lender, you know, believe it or not, the lender has a lot to do with how those leases are drafted. And so the lender might even require the financials of the tenant, you know, to make sure that, hey, you know, I need to know how they. Now, they'll see the books, like, if you have a loan on a particular asset, you know, you could see the income and expenses that you'll have to report usually once a year to the lender. But if they want to dive down a little bit deeper and figure out, you know, what the tenants are actually doing and how this place is really performing, they can have the right to do that. And you say, well, they really don't. I go, well, then don't borrow any money.
Right.
Zoning, everybody hears it. Third zoning. Now, where I come from in Houston, there is no zoning. You can do whatever you want, right?
For real.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, Texas is not that. So, anyway, so basically, it's like, you know, and I'm not gonna tell me what I can put in there.
Houston or the whole Mexico?
Wow.
There might be other places in Texas that do that, but I know Houston does not require it. Yeah, so you know, what's interesting about that is, and you kind of scratch your head to a little degree, because where I grew up, you have a residential house next to a Class A office building in a neighborhood. It's actually in the neighborhood, the Class A office building. And it'll face the main road, but the back end is in a neighborhood. So I guess there's some benefits to having some too, but I'm really not for them. But I have to deal with them, you have to deal with them in Georgia, so. Oh, another thing you have to deal with is figuring out if it's in the county or the city. Now,
Right.
it's gonna be in a county for sure, but then it also might be within the city, so city has to. step in.
Like, for example, in the city of Lawrenceville, they don't allow any liquor stores at all.
Yeah,
So you have to just go right outside the city limit and boom, open a liquor store.
yeah, and you know what? That increases the value of that land, right? If you're just outside the border, you know, and that's, when you're evaluating properties, like no two pieces are created equal, right? And you could be on a corner and you could be right next to it, but not on the corner, there's gonna be a big difference in value.
Right.
This happened, a property you have for rent in Lawrenceville.
Yeah,
The county have the zoning for ARE. It's a residential business home,
okay,
but it's the Lawrenceville zoning is OA. And
Which office?
is, I have old paper here say, what? I talked yesterday in the Lawrenceville, say, no, yeah, this is new, we're resigning everything.
Wow.
But the owner, my client don't have idea that, no, we sent the email, what?
yeah, so
They're resigning everything now in this area.
Is it like downtown Lawrenceville? or-
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a scenic highway,
Oh, what's
Oh, same highway?
yeah, they resigning everything, the all principal scenic highway, just 2 block more, to the right and left side, they're resigning everything.
all the way to Chicago, probably.
What's that thing?
Also, it's office
Office.
district.
OI.
OI is, yeah, OI is industrial.
Office in line.
Office industrial, office
It is
district,
institutional,
institutional.
like,
Oh.
like a school.
Yes,
or something
or-
like that.
For the Roman project, it's kind of far.
Yeah, but it's a 3 dealers there. They close. They are 12 months for moving.
Chiquito, chiquito
Yeah,
eso.
cemetery, yeah.
City of Lawrenceville.
Yeah, yeah,
All the way to Sugarloaf and a little bit beyond too.
yeah.
Yeah.
The block before the professional of my client is C3. They change and two dealers, they need closing. And then June the next year,
Okay.
because he's changing for the,
What, I'm kind of surprised, I mean, they had the grandfather in, right?
So, yeah, I talked to you about grandfather,
Right.
clauses. So that's the other thing, when you're on my side, you're advising your client or whatever, it has a certain zoning right now, okay? And the use doesn't conform to that zoning. Your grandfathered in, but as soon as it changes hands, it could change and you can't do what the use is currently. Or even that, or if you take away a certain amount of the building, it triggers a change in use. So, these are things you kind of have to, kind of be at the speed on. And the best way to do that is really just get with the county or the city and sit down, like, not over the phone, like,
yeah,
need to
and I go there.
you need to make an appointment. There's some things you need to do face to face. That's one of them.
Yeah.
All right, so. Oh, yeah, insurance. Insurance, you gotta have that, right? So, yeah, it's important. So there's tenant insurance that's required, for, indemnifying the landlord and making sure and if you do, like, a lot of places, they say, okay, you're not gonna have hazardous materials. But, we know that there are businesses out there that deal with hazardous materials. So you have to, one, make sure the zoning is, allows for that industrial use. And then two, you gotta make sure you have insurance that would protect the landlord and things like that. Make sure they're okay with that kind of insurance. I think hazard only has one Z, but I'm not a good solver.
And there's flood insurance too.
Flood insurance.
That you
too,
can buy on there.
Yeah,
separately.
flood zones too. Another thing is a lot of people don't know that, like if you find out that your property is in a 100-year floodplain, you can go fight that. You can get out another civil engineer to, go ahead and, yeah.
It says-
Do your own study, things like that, and present it, you might be able to pull it out of there.
Yeah, it's, you contact,
Yeah. You gotta get a civil engineer, you gotta do hydrology, and you gotta do a lot of different things.
yeah,
But again, if you find yourself in a flood zone, guess what that does to the value? It doesn't go up.
Yeah.
I mean, the cheapest way to do it is to contact the survey company and ask for a certificate of elevation. Certificate of elevation, they do it, and then it really lowers the premium of the flood insurance
Yeah.
tremendously, usually.
Mhm.
And it costs you about $1,000 to do that. But then to change it, like you said, you gotta hire all those people, and
Yeah.
it becomes expensive.
But maybe sometimes worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I prefer-
you have to, it's basically you just condemn my property,
Yeah, it's prefer pay
Right.
$5,000 for a study than.
And,
the price.
but on the flip side of that too, right? Everybody likes to fight their property taxes, but everybody just saw their property taxes go up, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you have a piece of property that you just found out is in a flood zone, that you own it, you don't plan on doing much of anything, take that to the county and say flood zone, lower the price.
Oh, yeah, good point.
So personal property insurance, like a tenant, let's say, shares, things like that, things you use to do your business, coolers, things like that, you wanna have that insured. Again, I'm moving kind of quick, because more of an overview, but y'all stop me anytime like you're done. And then these are kind of the services that we use,
Which is the black one of $500?
This one, this, yeah,
Gold Star?
like Darth Vader.
The
So,
monopoly. Monopoly, those style, low man.
yeah. You see any of these little design things like that? It's under the umbrella of code.
Yeah.
You know, and they're buying everything. They're actually beginning to be a monopoly.
Is that your blue?
Yeah, yeah, red is, you know, LoopNet, like, is that, they have one for apartments.
That is not 75, it's one listing, 109.
One, oh, well, I got one for
Under
75.
the-
Yeah.
Hey, anyone with you? Anyone with you?
You got grandfather then.
Yeah, well, it's expensive.
It's so expensive right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
It costs me like, pay how much, like $1,000 annual, I said, well,
Yeah.
let me think about it for one.
It's like I said, we sold business to business services.
Yeah,
It's a thing.
yeah, it's very expensive, you know, when you're the biggest in there, I mean, that's why, you know, government needs to watch those things, because, you know, you can control a market like that.
It's actually-
It's-
So you actually pay over $1,000 a month? Or do you have all four? Or do you have only 2 or 3 of these?
Oh, no, you see all those up there?
He paid it.
This guy, hey.
Me too.
You're with Keller Williams.
Mhm.
I thought you're. So
Trinity Commercial Real Estate, you know how you can be, you know, anything you want, really, and then be under the umbrella. Yep, that's kind of over here. All right, let me see.
Big French company.
Okay.
Sí, porque nosotros tenemos.
¿Cuál tú usas?
Yo, no, yo estoy ahí.
Okay.
Aquí venden droga por el lado, entonces.
Más o menos. Más o menos. Sí, pero no,
Y'all talk
también.
amongst yourselves.
Ajá.
Oh, all
Y
right.
todo el entrenamiento aquí.
All right, financial terms. Hey, we talked about some of this stuff. I'm gonna blow past that. Now, we could go through it real quick and talk about cap rate. Anybody want to do that? Anybody know the answer to how cap rate? So,
Sure.
good.
I'm sure you're gonna go over it. Can you go over it quickly?
Yeah, so, a cap rate is the amount of money you're gonna make on an unleveraged investment. Okay, meaning no money. So if you buy a property for $1 million at a 10% cap rate, it's gonna net you 100,000. That's pretty much but that's pretty much it in a nutshell. A lot of people want to make this stuff complicated. But I make it look easy. So anyway,
I spoke first.
with that,
Yeah, the first year.
yeah, and there's other metrics that you want to do, you know, a lot of people just do most people look at a cap rate when they're looking at an investment, but then that's more or less like, okay, it meets that criteria, then I go further. And you start up here and then you end out down here to figure out if this is something you want to buy, you know? So this is just kind of a quick down and dirty, hey, it deserves another look, right? Internal rate of return. Anybody want to take a stab at that one? Okay, so essentially, it's the amount of money that your money makes inside the investment, and it takes into account the time value of money. So, a discount rate and internal rate of return kind of work hand in hand. A lot of, there are problems to every matrix, right? There's problems to every one. It's just, but if you were going to compare 2 different investments or 3 different, whatever you're gonna compare, just be consistent on how you do it. If you're gonna compare these investments through an internal rate of return, don't start looking at other matrices. You know, just keep it simple. So the problem with the internal rate of return is it assumes the amount of money that you get from a cash flow is invested in the same kind of investment that's giving you this kind of return. So, and that's probably not gonna be the case.
Right,
Now, you can also do a modified internal rate of return, which basically tells the spreadsheet or calculator the amount of money that that investment makes. Like, this one makes a certain amount, but when I get a cash flow, it's gonna go in this, and I tell it how much it's gonna make. So you dictate the amount of money that it actually makes. Cash on cash return, real simple. It's just the amount of money that you make on the amount of money you invest into something, right? Most people like look at that, like. Any questions on any of that stuff? Y'all jump right in. Discount rate, similar to the internal rate of return. It just says if I want to make 8% on future cash flows, and I discount it back today at a certain amount, you know, how much can I pay for that investment? That's essentially what it is. All right. Equity multiple, anybody want to take a stab at that? Anybody want to know why people do that? A lot of investors, you know, don't care about the cap rate, don't care about internal rate of return, don't care about any of that stuff. What they do care about is like Mr. Wonderful. When am I gonna get my money back?
right.
How soon am I gonna get the amount of money that I invested in this deal? So there's that. And these are all examples. I'll email you if you wanna take a look at them.
Okay,
Then,
I'll take a picture then.
yeah, okay, good. All right, net operating income. We talked about that. Debt service coverage ratio, anybody want to take a stab at that? It's a lender, financial covenants measure, and it basically says they'll usually assign between 1.25 and 1.35. So your net operating income has to be 1.25 or 1.35 larger than your total debt service.
That's when the bank is involved, that's when
That's when, and here's
Senior.
another thing that y'all, you may or may not know. Like, look, you can be in default on your loan without actually missing one payment. Like, in other words, you're making all your payments to your loan just like you normally do, but you fall below the 1.25 debt coverage, you're in default. And that triggers things. You know, when I was telling you about, you know, the financials that you have to usually get once a year, well, they're gonna pick that up. You know, and say, hey, guys, they don't bring the hammer out. It's not like they give the property back. They're not in the real estate business, but they're like, what's going on? What are the tenants like? I mean, what's the situation? Do you have somebody move out? What's going on?
So with,
They actually check it, even though the loan already issued. For the vibration.
Oh, 100%, like financial crisis, they were even doing that before, but they were hiding it with cap rates. They said, well, we don't really care about, you know, as much the debt service coverage ratio. We're more concerned about like, well, what's the value of the property? Because before the financial crisis, people were like, okay, yeah, I'd love to get that real estate back. You know what I mean? And they were more concerned about other things other than little financial covenants, things like that. But now it's real important, you know, it shows the health of it. So to your point, yeah, they have to make sure these loans are performing.
Yeah, how often they are going to evaluate this?
Usually once a year.
Or once a year,
Mhm.
and not wait until the end of the term.
No, like, you know, for the lender, yeah, they'll ask for financials usually once a year.
so not during, but after the pandemic, when a lot of office space was empty and all that, have you seen how that has affected some of these big properties?
So that's good point to bring up. So you have what we call lease occupancy and physical occupancy,
Mhm.
right? So lease occupancy says we're 95% leased, right? Physical says we're only like 55.
Right.
That's concerning to a degree, right? But those tenants were still paying the rent,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's a concern because they're thinking, well, if these people don't need to come back to the office, what are they gonna do when it comes up for renewal?
Right, exactly.
Chances are they're not gonna wanna at least get the same
minimize.
amount of space.
Yeah.
Or not take the space at all. And then if you take a look at that tenant, then you have to look at that industry. And then,
Right.
you know what I mean? And it's a
Exactly.
domino effect, and then that's why, you hear on the headlines, commercial real estate is kind of in a situation, but that's more limited to office in certain areas, because, look, retail, you've seen these, retail's in good areas, right? I mean, not all real estate is created equal, as we know, but for the most part, retail with good anchors and things like that, they're performing well,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Unemployment is like in Atlanta, it's basically zero. In other words, like, it's less than 3%. And those people that fall into that category, the 1, 2, they don't wanna work. But they're still gonna buy stuff.
They're realtors.
Yeah, we don't, yeah, well, that's the only. That's true.
Unemployment. In this market, yeah. we are-
I mean, I want to employ it every month to my next deal, and then I want to employ it again to my next deal.
Oh, yeah, it's someone's wife that she hates them. I'm employed right now.
Right. But I'm working a lot.
Yeah, you're not bringing you money, you must be really bad at what you do.
I don't know, it's the same case, but in downtown, it's a big building with 12 companies. We worked before in this building with a restoration company there. And the management talked with our office owner, say, okay, in the pandemic, they say, okay, we can't break in the contract. This is a long term, 10 years, 15 years, whatever. Say, we can't break it. We need to go to the court, blah, blah, blah. This is the deal. We reduce each lease 50%, or 75% is dependent how big is the company. But the owner never lost the building.
Yeah.
Because he did talk to the bank, say, hey, I have my physical tenant is reduced,
Right,
but I have full lease.
so they have many contracts.
100%
with
lease.
lesser, okay.
But
I don't know, it's just
it's
interesting.
going to affect the debt ratio based on that.
Yeah.
Because the
Oh, yeah.
rent reduced.
Yeah, but he's paid.
Okay, that's a good point, because we just talked about it, the debt service coverage ratio, yeah, it's gonna fall way below that.
I'm sorry.
But to Javier's point, look,
Depends
in
on
these
the-
situations, right, communication is really important. You don't pick up the phone call from your bank, that's a problem, okay? You just like, hey, look, here's the situation, lay it out, all cards on the table, and then how do we want to work out this deal? Look, I've got a couple of solutions, I've talked to my tenants, I've got some things that I have in mind, I'd love to share them with you. If you want this piece back, go ahead, but.
So for example, if you know anything or what's going on here in the forum. So I imagine that some of the stores and restaurants are gonna decline in revenue for the amount of time that they, do the construction.
Yeah.
So I guess they're gonna take that in consideration while the construction is going, because it's not their fault,
Oh, I mean, as far as like.
tenants, like personal.
The construction is keeping people from
Sure.
coming in, it's
Yeah.
because I have to go here and then realize I have to turn around and go back,
It's-
it's not that.
Really? Yeah?
Yeah.
Meaning,
In certain areas, like if it was a more permanent traffic
Mhm.
change in the way, like there was a new light and, everybody has to go here now and they can't go here, and we have to make a U-turn, that's a problem. This, pardon our progress, right? It's something that's temporary, and they know it's temporary, and yes, it might be a little bit of an inconvenience, but if you're a really good. And we know it's gonna come to an end, it's not like this is gonna be here forever,
Right.
eventually it's gonna work, right? And if you're good and you're at the forum, then chances are, you're pretty good if you survive, the pandemic and all that kind of stuff, then you'll survive, a couple bulldozers,
I think that's your point of view, but if you're the operating manager of Aoki and revenue's down 25%, you
Oh,
don't
they're
think that way.
straight and bloody murder. As a tenants, I mean,
Right.
if there's a wreck in front of your restaurant, they want to reduction, okay? So, that's why I'm not really trying to get out of retail, because, every little thing is, a catastrophe, right?
Right.
Everything is a catastrophe. But it's an inconvenience, but I don't think at the end of the day, it's gonna kill anybody. Or else they wouldn't do it. Or at least.
Well, I think they'll,
Or you think they wouldn't. do
they're
it.
thinking long-term, it's,
Long term,
obviously,
if you survive the pandemic,
right,
couple bulldozers. And by the way, once it gets done, flat foot traffic, things like that, so it
Sure.
should help in the long run. Your debt constant is just basically the total of percent that you pay on your loan every year. It's a constant. You know how like if you pay a certain amount towards principal, like over the amount or the certain amount over your normal payment, your payment doesn't change for the next month, right? It's constant. Okay, so then you might end up like not having to pay the last month, but mortgage payments are constant, whether you add more to principal every month or not. So, and this is just the total percentage that you'll pay. Like if you said your interest rate is 6%, your debt constant is 7.73, given the parameters like 25-year and things like that. So it's a quick way to do it down and dirty, like, hey, 7.73% of the revenue is gonna go towards this thing, so. But you don't have to worry about all that. You can refer it to us.
I have a question regarding the lease.
Yeah,
Let's say I have a case that's the tenant moving and the lease is signed, but when they try to apply the business license, they got declined by the city. So who's responsible?
wait. You mean the lease was already done?
Lease already signed.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, so is that the tenant's own responsibility or it will be the landlord's responsibility?
That's pretty much the tenant's responsibility.
Okay.
Like, I don't even know if there's gray area.
Yeah.
But before you go looking at property, make sure that you can do what you want to do. Yeah. Now, okay, look, if, I mean, at the end of the day, the landlord would probably be like, look, just go on, and that's only if they got like 5 or 6 people waiting, like, they just and move on about it. Depends on them.
so it's really, besides all the different terms and all that, it's very different than residential, which is mainly what I do, right? But one thing I like about it is that there's no emotions or seems, it's all numbers.
That's
Which-
a misnomer, okay?
Okay. Well, less emotion.
emotional, but it's not
Less.
like the same emotions that.
Oh my God,
You can't
yeah.
quantify the emotions like. You know what I mean? I can't
Right.
quantify that. You know what I mean? The numbers work, but there's situations where you'll get in where everybody gets emotional, chairs go through the window, all that. Wow. Yeah, but to say that it doesn't get emotional is, now, the thing is like. It should be only temporary, everybody, all right, sorry, okay, come back to the table, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah,
I got a deal right now where everybody just threw up their hands and slammed the door at each other. Do I think there's a deal that's still be done? Yes, I do. But everybody has to vent out, their emotions. the reasons why they think they're right and that sort of thing. Like, some people like yell, scream, and I'm like, just let it out, just go, just go. I don't like anything else, just go. All right, now that that's all done, let's talk about the solution, you
La,
know?
la, 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 in the meantime.
Creating wealth and commercial real estate. Wow, did we talk about that before? Yes, we did. So, quite honestly, it's very similar, you know, to creating wealth and residential, you know, rental properties, things like that. You know, whether you own a bunch of real, you know, people that are living in houses, or you have, you know, people leasing from property, you know, it's more or less the same thing, you know. The reason I would be more inclined to do it on the commercial side is because I really don't want to deal with people, you know, living in places. You know, there are laws to protect people, but it's good laws. I'm not saying they're bad laws. I just don't want to deal with them. Just like I don't want to own a restaurant. I don't want to deal with food. I love eating them. You know what I mean? So it's kind of the same way. So if you're okay, and then when people move out, you know, I mean, I'm not just saying that people, like, when tenants move out, they don't leave it in a wreck. You know what I mean? But you know, you gotta get it right, you know, there's mold, there's things like that, like if there's mold or whatever, that after, you know, a tenant, you know, commercial tenant moves in, well, you don't need to fix that. You know, being the tenant, so that's kind of I don't wanna be responsible for people and where they live. So if I was gonna build well, it would probably be, you know, on commercial side, just because, feel bad, family, something bad happened,
Right,
whatever.
right.
I'm not saying that it can't happen in a commercial setting, you know, I feel bad, but.
What's the worst scenario you've had in a commercial setting? Tell some stories, come on, make it.
Let's see. I haven't had any real, you know, travesties, you know, well, it does go back to having somebody living on the property, like self-storage, you know, back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
When somebody used to live there, that probably was the turning point for me, okay? So one, if you get fired and they live there, what are you gonna do, right? Evict them? I don't know how that works. That wasn't the case, but there was a mold situation. It wasn't, the HVAC wasn't draining right, or things like that. We had a mess of a situation on our hands, because now you're liable for somebody living there. And now, you know, the cat's out of the bag, that there's mold, and you have tenants, even though they're just storing stuff, you know, they feel like they're entitled to a claim, you know, so you gotta get in there, you gotta fix it. And the thing about, anybody dealt with mold remediation?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we did too. And the experience that I had was they got rid of the mold, but it looked like they set off a nuclear bomb in the place and said, mold's gone, we're out. And I mean, pipes were hanging, I mean, sheetrock had holes all in it, they were messing up the floor. So then you gotta pay to go button that all back up again.
Right.
So that was a story, and then, I don't know.
That's why it's best to contact a company that does the mold remediation and the restoration at the time, so they can bring you back the way it was.
Right.
You know, instead of just one mold company here, one restoration up there, one handyman up there, out here and one end.
Yeah, because, you know, if you're the same company that's gonna be putting this thing back together, you're probably gonna be a little bit more careful
Yeah.
on how you get rid of the mold. Let's see.
But they get crazy also in charging people, like, we moved the desk from that corner to that corner, that's gonna be $550. Think that. Stupid stuff like that, you know.
Yeah,
Like, wait a minute.
especially if they're
For how many-
union, right?
Not from all restoration. Oh, there's a flood here, so we have to move all these chairs out of here, it's gonna cost you $1,000.
Yeah.
I take a job for $8 million. In Jacksonville. It's a big building, they broken the four 4 inches pipe, water, the tank, they broken and ruining all floor. Yeah, it's big damage.
Oh,
$8 million, all job.
$8 million to restore the whole thing,
Restoration and renovation.
put it back together.
Yeah. It's only half built, no half old one. It's
Wow.
only half water
Oh,
coming
wow.
all down to 12 floor in the basement. We're using a big pump in the basement. Because the old basement is full. It's 8 feet of water in the basement. All basement, all water, using a big pump.
Scuba lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the pool.
So it goes back to, remember my son, or he goes, I skipped over insurance, gotta have insurance.
Yeah.
Important to have insurance for,
Everybody-
$8 million.
Yeah.
That we might hold up the tents and go home, come out of pocket. 8 mil.
So for 8 million, is the insurance company cover it?
Yeah.
Usually, but for.
100%?
100%.
Minus it. Minus it.
The commercial, but residential too, you only have the deductible, but each water loss, damage, everything. They cover. The only issue is with this natural force. The torment, hurricane, tornado, be careful with that. Because the water intrudes, the water is coming from outside, sometimes the insurance not cover that.
Right, they consider it flood.
Yeah, well, you're a specialist.
Bottom up,
Yeah.
and they cover it.
Yeah, and
Top down,
Marietta, when the Chattahoochee River is overflow,
yeah,
it's 1 million pounds there, million pounds.
yeah.
The
If you
insurance
don't
say,
have flood-
"Mm-mm." They using
Flood
FEMA,
insurance,
and FEMA,
Yeah.
FEMA, nah.
The government, me,
FEMA, oh.
good luck with that. High risk assets. Have y'all ever heard big risk, big reward? Anybody?
Sure.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. You take that, like, drop some money on that, be the trailblazer, build it up. You see it, a lot, and not just in Atlanta, but you see it in a lot of different cities, you can drive down, like Bert, he left, he had so much money, I believe. So he's interested in, that sort of thing, but you gotta make sure if you're gonna drop money in these areas, just see if anybody else has put money into the deal. You don't wanna be the trailblazer.
Mhm.
Kind of same thing here, or you can be big risk, big reward.
Right.
So. Let's see. Then you have some risk. Then you have no risk, like, these are low risk. Anybody heard of Twitter? Heard about that one?
Heard about that?
Okay, so. Landlords love to have these big companies, right? They're publicly traded, you know what? When Elon took over that thing, you know what he did?
Got 40% of the floors.
He cut 80% of the force. Turns out you can operate Twitter on 20%. Go figure, right? So they don't need all that office space, right?
Mhm.
So. What did he do? He stopped paying. On all his assets. And if you want to get a phone call from a landlord or somebody, stop paying them. They'll call you. They love you at that point. Love you in the fact that they can't wait to get a hold of you. So that was the thing, like when you say low risk, I mean, some of these companies, are here today and gone tomorrow, right? Anybody heard of Sears?
Mhm.
Montgomery Ward, anybody?
But it's not an overnight thing either. I mean, it takes years.
No,
Well, not really, not nowadays. Not-
It's the same way.
Twitter happened like that.
Right, you're right, yeah.
For Twitter's case, because the lease is up, right, otherwise.
No, they had long term.
Yeah, local.
So what happened afterwards anyway?
So it goes to court, and, there's money set aside for this sort of thing. Like, look, I can pay you X amount right now, or we can drag this on forever. And they'll just say, all right, I'll take that, I mean, it's kind of a workout. You were talking about, a situation where the pandemic, would you rather get 100% of nothing
Oh.
or something,
This happened with, this is a Twitter happened with the pharmacy, pharmacy company, grade 8.
Well, Rite Aid still had to pay all those things. Get this small story, I got 5 minutes. So, some of these, we have all these consolidations, right? Accurate Spies, whomever, right? So some of these aren't around, they just been absorbed. So they have these long-term triple net leases, remember? And so it was announced, right, that they were taking over. So they had a hotshot attorney from New York send out letters to all the people that own those properties and said, I hate to break it to you, but we just got bought out, so we're no longer responsible for the lease, right? And so one of these guys, one of my friends, he advised one of his clients to get in one of these things. And he said, I got this letter, what the heck's going on? And so the attorney looked at it, read it top to bottom, had a couple other people, and he goes, I don't see an out here. I don't care that y'all got bought. You still have to pay, right? So they called the attorney up and said, listen, I don't see anywhere, you need to show me where it says you don't have to pay this anymore. And he goes, I can't, because it's not in there. And he goes, well, you're still gonna pay, right? And he goes, absolutely, but you'll be surprised at how many people accept this and move on. So you gotta be aware of those things. So they send out these blast letters. Some people just go, okay, well, that makes sense, so. And they had no right to do it, so be careful out there, nefarious people. Familiar. So I think that's it. Here was one little back of the envelope projection that we did. This little thing, like, it basically said income expenses, net income minus debt equals debt, income after debt. And then it kind of gives you your cash on cash, your equity multiple, annual appreciation, things like that, the debt service coverage ratio. Excuse me, and this is kind of a basic form just to see if it warrants any more flow, right? If you have a certain cash on cash hurdle and it doesn't meet it, and this is the best it's gonna look, by the way. When you put it, you can make a spreadsheet look as good as you want. You have to be real to yourself. And then use this, and then you can dive in further. Okay, on the surface, it looks like something I want to do. Then you really underwrite the deal, right? You have a vacancy in there. What else happens? Things like that. What if I don't get the loan that I did? And you kind of stress test, the investment. And that's it. That's all I got. And oh, look at that.
I got one quick question. How do you lead generate for your business? I mean, like residential, you can door knock, you can have open houses, you can do all sorts of crazy stuff. How do you lead generate for your business?
We do open house now.
Yeah.
It depends. It depends on what kind of business you're after. Like, just to give you an idea, if you said, like, if you just did a deal here, like in this building, which I've done, I've handled the real estate in here. Then you can go to the tenants in the building and just say, like, look, not solicitation, right? Because they'll throw you out. Just want to let you know, I did an expansion, for one of my clients in this building. And just want to leave my card and let you know that this is what I do. Love to help you. I don't know where you are in your real estate year. Love to take a look, love to help you, just give me a call, whatever. They're like, some people are like, I need to see you right now. We've had that. That's one way of doing it. If you're going for investment sales or listings, let's say listings or whatever, it's a little bit harder. You're gonna have to cold call, you're gonna have to figure out, who the warm body is in that XYZ LLC, and are they the decision maker, and are they in the country? And it's a little bit more challenging. The reward is just like listings, for For residential, that's kind of where you wanna be. But for us in the commercial world, tenant reps, pretty good living, and then maybe get some referrals, y'all get those? Yeah, okay. So anyway, so like a lot of the stuff that happens in the commercial world, happens in our world too. But as you saw, the areas were different, it's way different, it doesn't even match, and there are those areas that, like your lease, right?
I'm the zero size.
Signed a lease and he can't do what he does. Actually, I have done that, by the way. The county, and this is my fault, right? So my client did tent, like, just tent windows. Okay. Yeah, well, when that county considered that automotive, like, and you fall into this whole different automotive.
Ooh,
Yeah.
it takes a specialized landlord.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my
it's a
gosh.
special use. I just did a deal right now. That I have the owners out in California and, so I manage, the property, just basically get, tenants in there and things like that. And so we're getting a tattoo, person. He's really good.
Tattoo business.
Tattoo business. And
We are at a commercial zone, it was allowed to do the tattoo business, but they say that this business has to be 600 feet away from the PUD zone in Gwinnett. And we are at 550 feet, so they reject that business.
600 feet from where?
Go for it.
From the
Don't try to go
PUD
for a variance,
So,
Yeah, because it's for
Take-
skin,
yeah.
they need a light,
Take anybody out to lunch.
yeah.
Yeah. What's
You
the
like
name?
baseball?
It's Gwinnett County. You put a cowboy hat and some cowboy boots.
Yeah, so anyway, that was one, and anyway, the tattoo guy had to get their special use permit. And that took, it's almost like a straight up rezoning, right? Hammer in the sign, guess what's coming here? If y'all have any pitchforks or torches, bring them, and let's go fight this thing. That's always fun.
Yeah, we never is really hard.
So, yeah, so
Is,
it's,
For commercial, for residential is.
not for
that tough.
commercial, is,
Yeah.
but that's a good question, how do you get, was it you, Cam, that asked that? Like, how do we get business?
Yeah, lead generate.
Yeah, that's it, I like door knocking,
networking.
industrial, like tenant, they love, don't go in a coat tie. When you're door knocking industrial tenants, because there you go, there's the door. You come in like this, maybe you have your boots on, they're like, yeah, come on back, you wanna see the operation? That
Jeans.
sounds good to you.
Yeah, jeans and,
Yeah,
shoot, so,
so,
go over here.
office, a little bit more dressed up, this is about as dressy as I'm gonna get, but on the top producers in office, what they dress up. I think that's kind of it. I don't know if this is recording or not, but any other questions?
and one more thing, I know maybe this is the silly questions, I have client, they're in Georgia, but they want to purchase the commercial property out of Georgia, so do we need to have that out of state license to do that? To help him to acquire the property,
Just refer and get it.
or
Right.
has to be referral, so.
Sometimes.
So.
Because you don't know the area that
Are we
well.
recording this?
Stop it. Before you answer.
Thank you so much, thank you.
Let's go outside and do.
See you later.
Okay, everybody, let's go. The hallway.
So the easiest way to do it is, refer it, right? You can refer it, and then you can get involved and get a referral fee.
This is how I do right now with the deal in Indiana. So confirm with the broker first, and see if they're paying out of state, right? They say no, most of the states, they are okay with commercial.
Yeah.
And for that one, they give me like 80% referral fee and they get 20, so it's okay.
But they don't do anything.
They don't need to do anything but what?
They just sign their name right by the license.
They say, well, I'm still responsible for that, so I need to get money if they use something.
I had somebody do
Because I
that a
don't
long
have
time
that
ago.
control, so what do you do?
I had somebody actually do that a long time ago, and they said, look, all you gotta do is just sign your name on this thing. And that's it, I'll do everything else.
Yeah,
And then I took it to an attorney, or just, you know, you gotta have an attorney, thing, because they're expensive. So I said, what kind of liability do I have if I sign this? And they go, well, you take all the responsibility. I said, we're done. So just be careful, you know, when you're.
Comes on the right
And
page.
usually it's pretty cool. I mean, like, they're like, look, I'm not licensed there, I'll pay your parole fee.
Because if you go to one transaction, for me, a license, you know, test everything is expensive, it looks fine.
yeah,
Sometimes we'll talk to other brother, hey, I have my client, 50-50, now 80, you know.
yeah. it was
There are
like-
a number of people, you know, like,
Yeah, I mean, we're, you know, Keller Williams is everywhere, so
yeah.
just try to maybe find one that's a deal and
For that,
work out an agreement.
yeah, for that transaction, I just had that, the listing agent kind of broke in his office.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thanks, Cravens.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you for killing us.
Eres,